Hello folks, this is ICT with a tutorial on the ICT swing trading model, and we will be incorporating institutional order flow with this teaching module. Now, I know some of you have in the past seen my previous material as it relates to swing trading, and it's pretty generic, um, pretty um, basic in terms of what many of you probably would have expected, but I think with this specific tutorial, it'll help streamline majority of the things that you were unable to divulge from my earlier works. You'll be able to uh, draw a stark contrast to what was missing from the original teaching and what is available now with the understanding that's been shared through the ICT Sniper Series video course and the Precision Trading course. Um, and obviously the earlier works in this present market maker collection series. We're going to be looking at specifics on how I go into the marketplace, how I go in looking for specific setups based on swing trading mentality. And we're going to give you the actual step-by-step procedure that I employ when I break down the marketplace. It always begins with a top-down analysis, and I used the tools that you've already been accustomed to, but I do it in such a way that it's very methodical, it's very systematic. It doesn't deviate, it's not ambiguous, it's very clear, and it's not a lot. It's not a lot of information at all to you know go through to determine a trade decision, whether you should be taking it a long, a short, or just standing on your sidelines and just waiting for a new opportunity. The the main takeaway from this module, I think, is going to be the fact that when we go into the higher time frames, what are we looking for on the higher time frame? How do we break that down and use it going forward? And some of it will seem very similar to some of the earlier works that I've shown, but the main intention is to draw all of the previous uh, insights and make them into a very methodical approach to going into the marketplace, studying price action, and no fundamental data, no indicator-based decision making, just purely looking at price action alone, higher time frames, top down, moving into a lower time frame. Now, when I say lower time frame, we're only going to be really specifically dealing with 1 hour setups. Okay, but it's going to be hinged and framed around what takes place on the daily and weekly chart. Okay, so without further ado, let's get on with this particular trading module on ICT swing trading. Okay, folks, we are looking at a ICT workspace. This is an idea that I suggest you employ with your analysis. And it's something that you've seen a couple times in my earlier works, but I just realized it's a lot easier to streamline the teachings and review videos working with just one chart and just moving between the time frames on one chart. But as you're developing and learning the concepts that I'm sharing in your demo account, the idea is to kind of like have this mindset in front of you. Okay, and I've been doing it for a lot longer than majority of you that are watching, and because they're my tools and it's my approach, I'm very familiar with it, and I can move in and out of time frames with the understanding of what it is I'm specifically looking for, and not lose sight or lose track of the higher time frame analysis principle that we're going to be really focusing on to facilitate swing trading. The the larger chart on the right hand side, as you see here, we're going to be predominantly working with the 1 hour chart for setups. Okay, and it's going to be framed on the idea of what is seen on the lower left hand chart here, which is in this case the daily. Now, the rules for swing trading as it relates to ICT, I like to go 2 time periods higher than my executionable time frame. For instance, if I'm trading on an hourly basis or looking for setups on an hourly chart, okay, I need to have the higher time frame analysis influence arrived at from not the 4 hour chart, which would be one step above the 1 hour chart. I'm looking at the daily chart, okay, and then above it is obviously the weekly chart, and then you see that up here in the upper left hand corner. How big you scale these is a matter of your personal preference, okay? But as long as you have the ideal uh, scenario of having all of the time frames in front of you, especially when you're first learning, because if you don't have this in mind, you can look over here in this chart here, and what you see a lot of times in my reviews is we'll have one time frame, and I'm only talking about this, okay? But unfortunately, a lot of times I make it seem so easy that I can see everything just on that one time frame. I've already did my analysis on the higher time frames and worked my way down into that time frame many times you see in the review. And the review is really that it's reviewing price action. I'm not teaching my trading concepts, because if you go through the tutorials, that's the part or point, if you will, of the tutorials. Okay, so there's a difference. Okay, sometimes in my reviews I do a little bit of teaching, but as it relates to real hardcore analysis, you need to be going through the process of top down as we're discussing here. So now, if we're looking at the idea of trading on 1 hour setups, okay, how do we arrive at those setups based on a weekly and daily time frame? Well, the first thing is we'd like to look at the dollar index, because as it relates to forex, the dollar is king, okay, and price action is king. So when we go into analysis, we have to first arrive at what we expect the dollar to do. Is the dollar bullish? Is the dollar neutral? Or is the dollar bearish? Those are your three choices to arrive at in your analysis. Based on that analysis, it gives you every aspect of trading foreign exchange that you would ever need. Okay, it's very simple. If the dollar index is bullish, we would be looking primarily for shorting opportunities in foreign currencies. If the dollar is bearish, we would primarily be looking for bullish conditions in foreign currencies. So it's very simple. If the conditions in the dollar index are a little muddy, or we just really can't arrive at a trade idea based on the dollar index, that would basically mean that you're neutral in the dollar. So that means you either stand on the sidelines or don't swing trade. Go down to a smaller time frame for doing something like scalping or intraday day trading. Okay, so have that in your notes. If we ever arrive at the higher time frame analysis principles that we're discussing here, if it's a little unclear as to what it is most likely going to be doing, drop down into a lower time frame and just primarily work in those short time frames. Okay, and we'll talk more about that as it relates to short-term trading and day trading in the later modules in this series. Now, originally I had material for this module, and I elected to change some things and omit some others because we'll probably be more apt to see it better explained in the day trading module in this series. And don't be afraid that I'm taking everything away and not teaching you everything. Everything that I'm willing to share is what I'm sharing. Okay, so when this series is done, don't ask me for anything else that may have not been shared, because if it's not here, you're not getting it. So there you go. You can have wild success for the principles that I've shared thus far. Even if I don't do this video and never do any more, you've learned more than the majority of everyone else that's teaching in the circuits in foreign exchange or trading in general. But I want you to start with a weekly chart. Okay, and upper left hand corner, what you'll do is just you'll maximize that chart, and this is what you generally see when you see my analysis. It's in one chart perspective, and I never minimize my charts to show you the overlay of how I'm viewing the marketplace. Okay, but this is generally what you're not seeing. What I do is I try to get as maximum perspective as I possibly can on the higher time frame. Okay, and we talked about during this time period here being bullish on the dollar index, and we've been bullish all through here. Okay, and in fact, I was calling for 105 in that area as longer term objectives should the dollar continue its move higher.